Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to In the Crosshairs. My name is Eduardo Del Boy, and today I have a guest with me, as you probably know from previous webcasts. This is David Gollob, former CBC, NPR, and BBC correspondent in Central America, as well as producer of the national news of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. David, welcome.
Hi, Eduardo. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I've written this article on on what happened this past weekend, and one of the major issues that is really affecting many countries of the world is the diaspora of Venezuelans, but the 8 million Venezuelans who have left their countries, almost 3 million of which have settled in Colombia. From your perch in Medellin, how do you see this impacting on Colombian society?
Well, it's a good way of phrasing that question, Eduardo, because the impact, first of all, is sociological. The impact has been to trigger a wave of xenophobia, such as I've never seen in a country like this before. People are getting blamed for Venezuelans are getting blamed for crime, increase in crime. And statistically, there's been no increase in crime, and certainly not increase in tendencies by migrant populations to be criminal. They've been blamed for everything that goes wrong, in people's lives, from the difficulty to finding a house, difficulty to rent a house, to rent a house out, because people are worried about the Venezuelans coming here and taking advantage of people, in housing, and so it's been really distressing to see this, and politicians have taken advantage of it. Some have gone on the record to say unappealing things about Venezuelans, and I hear it all the time. I hear it all the time in my surroundings. I mean, even my wife, who's a wonderful person, had this thing about Venezuelans because she had been robbed by one of them, and so that's sort of thing that gets around. So that's the first impact, I would say. The impact on the labor market has been negligible, I'd say, because most of them have taken up jobs that are low paying, and they're at the bottom of the pay ladder. And there's always demand for people to clean toilets and stuff like that, really, in any society, in America as well. The other more unappealing impact of the Venezuelan refugee problem has been the numbers of women who have sought respite in prostitution, and that is something to mention, because it's something that has really strained the fabric of society. The women who are going out and on the streets, um, hookers and so on, are not very popular here. Although you think they turn a blind eye to it, but they do. They don't really. I mean, the cops do, but anyway. So there we go, Eduardo.
How are the authorities reacting? Are the police cracking down on Venezuelans? Are they allowing them free rein? What's the government's position on the behavior of the Venezuelan refugees?
Well, I think there's no real crackdown as such. I mean, every time that a Venezuelan is arrested or something for committing a crime, it's played up in the media, the same way as a gringo who's an American or Canadian or somebody like that, who's a victim of a crime or has perpetrated a crime, usually involving sex. There's So there's not very much patience for Venezuelans in the media, and they think they have a ready target, that increases the popularity of their shows, their broadcasts, when they hit that button.
Well, it's quite a turn of events. I remember when I was posted to the Canadian Embassy in Caracas from 1980 to 1984. The Venezuelans were on top of the world, and they saw the Colombian refugees as the criminals and the people to be feared. So it's karma's a bitch, as they say. It's now comes to the Venezuelans and the Colombians to deal with them the way the Colombians were dealt with 40 years ago. One last question: do you see any way that the Petro government could go against Maduro and condemn him for having a dictatorship and having stolen the election?
Well, I think that the problem that Petro faces is that he doesn't want to alienate his base. His base has shrunk considerably. His base is base of support. He came in with a great mandate for change, and he's been a bit of a disappointment. I'd say he's been a huge disappointment. He saw himself as a future Mandela, and he's been a mediocre president. I think everybody can confirm that. There's no way that he can get elected again without a radical base, and so he's jumped on the bandwagon, the knee-jerk reaction of left-wing leaders in Latin America to defend one of their own. I mean, is Maduro left-wing? I don't know because he's a fascist, he's a dictator.
Hmm.
And people have pointed out the fact that he's not generous with gays. He's not generous with anybody. He's not generous with the poor. He's in fact he's stolen from them. So I don't know. Your question again, please.
The question was, do you see Petro changing his policies to Maduro and coming out against the election?
No, I don't see him coming out and taking a strong stance on this issue because there's nothing in it for him except that the continuing regime, Maduro's regime continues, that then there'll be more and more refugees in Colombia, and that's because there's a bridge here between the two countries, and in fact it was closed during elections, but it was closed also by Duque, I think, for a period,
Hmm.
and at Cucuta. But this there's too much trade, and also his government is mixed up with the narcos. His government is mixed up with the corruption as well. It's impossible not to, I think, get mixed up in it. And part of that corruption is involved with purchasing Venezuelan energy supplies, like gas and
Hmm.
so on. And so, there's too much going on between the two countries for him to risk alienating Venezuela in the way that his predecessors did, and at the same time to pull, he's got to. Sorry, I'm learning.
Well, one interesting point you made was that Maduro is not really a leftist. I think that's underscores a new reality in Latin America that we're not so much talking about right and left as we are talking about democratic and autocratic.
That
Is that your feeling also?
Yes, it's very much my feeling, and it's very much the case that Maduro is not a leftist at all. I think anybody who's a leftist would be embarrassed to have him as their champion or to have him as their ambassador. Because he is not emblematic of leftist thought or socialism at all. I mean, the fact that he's cute, he's playing cute with Cuba and Russia and Iran and China doesn't mean that he's a leftist at all. It
Mhm.
means that these are the outlier countries. These are the countries that are against the American hegemony, and like Nicaragua and Ortega.
Yeah.
And so, is Nicaragua's Ortega a leftist? I don't think so anymore.
No, they're dictators now.
David said. So what is left of the left in Latin America? I think it's
Extreme
very,
right.
yeah, extreme right.
It's sad but true, and that's where that's where I have more respect for Chile's President Boric, who is a social democrat and who has condemned the Maduro regime vehemently. Well, David, has been very interesting speaking with you. Thank you for your perspective. A lot of people are not looking at Venezuela from the optic of its neighbors and the impact that the refugees are having on its neighboring states. It's a massive, massive, massive refugee problem. That is probably the largest peacetime refugee movement since the end of the Second World War. But I want to thank you so much for participating and for sharing with us your insights.
Thank you, Eduardo, for having me.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this podcast and you enjoyed this article, I would ask you to invite your friends and colleagues to subscribe, to share, and to comment on them. I look forward to seeing you next time. David, thank you very much. All the best to you in Colombia, and we'll talk soon. All the best to readers. Yes.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.